also have the joy of asking Julie to come on up. As you know, Julie is ministering in Utah, and she is ministering to the Mormon community and to other folks in Utah. So I'll go ahead and turn this over to her so she has her maximum time to be able to share what God is doing. That's the important thing. So.
I know when I got the email that said 8 minutes, I was like, oh my goodness, this is gonna take a miracle. So God's Spirit needs to lead this time. My name is Julie, and I attended Cornerstone. I started attending Cornerstone 10 years ago. And I am on staff with Cru, formerly known as Campus Crusade for Christ. And the past 10 years, I have lived here in Seattle, and I've met many of you 10 years ago. And then I was moved to Eugene, Oregon at the University of Oregon and worked there for 4 years. And took a sabbatical and lived in Portland for 6 months. And then I was asked by the HR team to move to Salt Lake City, Utah. And I will say that that would have been the last place I would have ever wanted to live in my whole entire life. And during that period of time, I was just in a season where I was telling the Lord on the chessboard of life, God was my king and I was his queen, and he can move me any direction he wanted me to move without killing me. And so when Salt Lake City, Utah was offered, I said, okay. And I went, and I just fell in love with the state. I fell in love with the city. I will go on runs, and I will start weeping, telling Jesus, thank you, it's so beautiful out here. It's just a beautiful place. So if you ever have a chance, and I would love to invite the folks at New Freedom Church and Cornerstone to just come and visit and see what the Lord has done in Utah. I heard a quote last week, and it has just stuck with me, and the quote is, a city won't transform unless it has transformed individuals. And isn't that what God is about, transforming us and bringing us closer to him, transforming us into his likeness so that God would allow us to live in our purpose, which is to display his glory. I wanted to share a little bit in the Bible. I'm not going to do the sermon, Pastor Joe, no worries. But I did want to share something. Hold on for a second. I just wanted to share a quick story. In Mark chapter 5, there is Jesus, and he decides to go over to the other side to, I actually can never pronounce the place, so I'm just going to, Gerasenes. I actually can't pronounce it. I can never pronounce it. So anyway, he goes to this place, and in a far off distance, there is a man. And this man is living among the dead in the graveyards. And he is a demon-possessed man. And he sees Jesus coming from afar, and he runs toward him. And the demon-possessed man asks Jesus, what will you do with us? And Jesus says, well, what is your name? And he says, we are legion, for we are many. And there's a lot of evil spirits that were living in this man. Jesus was not afraid because Jesus is God. And he basically told the evil spirits to go and to jump into the pigs, and then they ran off the cliff. Well, the interesting thing about this man is that everybody in the town knew who he was. They knew that he had evil spirits in him. They knew that he was unclean and an outcast. They knew, and he knew, that there was something deeply wrong with him, and that's why he was living among the dead. He was living in the graveyards. And then all the people in the town saw this man be transformed. And then after they saw him be transformed, they all of a sudden took notice about who Jesus actually is. And I just wanted to read this part to you really fast. So, the herdsmen fled to the nearby town and the surrounding countryside, spreading the news as they ran. People rushed out to see what had happened. A crowd soon gathered around Jesus, and they saw a man who had been possessed by the legion of demons. He was sitting there, fully clothed and perfectly sane, transformed. And they were afraid. Then those who had seen what happened told the others about the demon-possessed man and the pigs. The crowd began pleading with Jesus to go away and to leave them alone. And Jesus was getting into the boat, and the man who had been demon-possessed begged to go with him. But Jesus said, "No, go home to your family and tell everything the Lord has done for you and how merciful he has been." So the man started off to visit the 10 towns of that region and began to proclaim the great things Jesus had done for him, and everyone was amazed at what he told them. That was the very first missionary in the Bible. This man who was living in the dead, totally unclean, transformed by the living God. Everybody witnessed it, saw him be transformed, and he said to Jesus, "Can I come with you?" And Jesus said, "No, go and tell your family." And the man did, and he went to the 10 towns and told people what had happened. And people believed him because they saw and they witnessed the transformation. A city will not be transformed unless it has transformed individuals. I live in Salt Lake City, Utah, and it has a huge city of people living in lots of bondage. I have come here in the past and I've shared some statistics, and I don't know where the welcome table is, but maybe I have postcards and business cards, and it tells you some of the statistics about kind of what Salt Lake City, Utah is about. It's the vainest city in the world, according to Forbes magazine. It has the highest per capita of plastic surgeons. It has the highest prescription drugs prescribed predominantly for antidepressants toward individuals per capita. It actually is known as the most conservative state, but one of the most liberal cities, with actually the highest per capita of gay and lesbian population. There's just a lot going on in that city, but people are afraid to go there because the LDS culture is very well educated about how to rebuttal arguments in the Bible, and yet they don't know Jesus. They don't actually know the Bible. They've never really read. They're focused on the Book of Mormon. And so I believe that God has sent me to go there to proclaim the good news, to proclaim the fact that they are lost individuals, that they are broken, that they are living among the dead, and that there is a God who is merciful, who loves them, who wants to change them and transform them and bring freedom into their life. And I don't think it's just in Utah. I think it's actually here, even in Seattle. You're a part of this. You're a part of this with your neighbors. You're a part of this at your work. You're a part of this in the mission field. You're a part of this in Japan. You're a part of this in Cambodia and just Vietnam, everywhere. You are a part of this. You're a part of this in another part of the city, 2 churches combining in one this week. It is an amazing thing where God is getting the glory and the honor, and you are a part of this. And I just want to say thank you, first and foremost. Thank you for being obedient to the Lord and wanting to be a part of it. Praise Him that we get to have this opportunity. I wanted to show you a picture. I went to Moscow, Russia this summer. And in Moscow, Russia, you may not know this, but it is actually the second most populated city in the world after Mexico City. And it's actually the most expensive city in the world. And at any given point of time, there are 1 million people underground on the metro system. And there's some people here. We are eating our ice cream. And the girl on the far right, her name is Jenny, and she actually is a student here at in the United States. But the girl in the middle, her name is Eugenia. And I just wanted to quickly let you know a little bit about Eugenia. I met Eugenia the first week of school when we were there. We were there for 1 month. And Utah, right now, our partnership is with Moscow, Russia. So we are sending people to Moscow, Russia as a ministry. And so as you guys are sending me to Utah, you're actually sending other people to Moscow, Russia. You can see the connection on how it's so very circular and very connected and intertwined, the body of Christ. Eugenia, we met her, and the second week, we shared the gospel with Eugenia the first week, and then the second week, we talked to her, and I asked Eugenia, what do you think will happen to you after you die? And Eugenia says to me, I'm going to hell. And I said, oh, okay. The thing about Russians is they're very honest with you. And it's like, okay, why do you think you're going to hell? And she says, because I'm not good enough to get into heaven. I know the things that I have done, and I know the kind of person I am, and God would never let me into heaven. And so I shared with her the gospel again, and she says, yes, I understand this. And then I shared with her the Spirit Filled Life booklet, talking about this is what we have it with the crew, and it's just a booklet that talks about how it's not about a checklist and attaining certain things to have a relationship with God and to build a relationship with God. It's simply about letting God become the Lord of your life, taking the throne of your life, having faith that He's taken the throne of your life, and just moving in that direction. And she said, there's a verse in the Bible that says, are you so foolish that after attaining the Spirit that you are trying to accomplish things in your own effort? And she says, this is me. And I said, okay, well, would you like to be filled with the Spirit? Would you like to pray and ask God to take the leadership of your life? And she said, yes. The next week, we went through a follow-up, and it was about how to know that you are saved and confidence that you will not go to hell and that you are actually indeed saved. Because one thing we do at Crew is that we're focused on kind of the foundational part of of our faith. And so security of salvation. And we are on a walk, and she says to me, did you know that Moscow, Russia, there are about 14 million people living in this city? And I said, no. And she says, there is actually a statistic that in the 14 million people, about 1% truly follow Jesus. And I said, wow, Eugenia, how amazing is it that out of all of those people, we were able to meet part of the 1%, who is you. And she says, I do not believe that I have been part of that 1% until 1 week ago. A transformed life in a city of 14 million people. And you're a part of this. Currently, I am homeless. I am living in a home of a woman named Lori. Lori is a local I don't know what I'm saying, a local administrative judge in Salt Lake City, Utah. I have been praying for Lori since I've met her, Lori. I met her in Pilates class, and I've just been praying for her salvation. And it's kind of it's called prayer and watch. I pray for people, and then I watch and see what God will do in their life. And it's no pressure, it just happens. So I've been praying for her, and then recently my roommate got married, which is very typical for us single people who, especially are older, we tend to have, well, actually younger too, but we tend to have roommates who get married, and usually we rent from the people, and then they're the ones who get married, and then we're homeless, and we have to find a new place to live, right? And so before I left for Russia, I ended up going to Lori, and I have coffee with Lori about every 6 months. Now, the interesting thing about Lori is that she was raised Mormon, except after a few months where her and I were talking, and I found out within a few months of knowing her that she's actually an atheist. And Lori opened up her house to me. And so when I came back from Russia, I packed everything up, and I moved into Lori's son's room, and I'm living on his floor. And her son is living there with his girlfriend downstairs. And Lori, the atheist, is actually living on a pull-out love seat couch for the next few months until I figure out my housing. And I'm just sitting there for the first 4 mornings waking up in Lori's house. I'm thinking, I must have made a mistake. What am I doing here? And what if I displease Lori and she kicks me out of her house? What am I doing here? And last Wednesday, Lori had the day off, and the crew, we have this live stream, we had this national conference that was taking place, and her and I were sitting out on our back deck, and I was listening to the live stream, and she says, I asked her, hey, Lori, I'm listening to this live stream. Would you like to listen to it with me? I have no idea what's going to be shared on the live stream to a nationwide group of missionaries. And this atheist says to me, sure. So I opened up my computer and I let her listen. And the whole time for the next hour and a half of speaking, this woman keeps on saying that Jesus is deity. Jesus is deity. And then she starts talking about the love of Christ. She starts talking about God's mercy and grace. And if you talk to a Mormon about grace, they don't understand the definition of grace. It was new news to her. And then I started to realize why I was living under her roof. But I don't think I'm going to be living there that terribly long or forever. And that is one of the reasons why I'm transitioning into my need. And I found a place. It's in Salt Lake. It's close to the main transport station. It's a gentrified area. It's a townhouse. And I would like to establish a place where students can come and have a secure place to live, because none of the missionaries on my team actually own a home. We're all very transient and we're all just kind of there renting. But I want to build more security for the ministry in Salt Lake City, Utah. And so I'm asking people, I'm challenging people to pray about um, $100 a month, $200 a month. I'm trying to raise $1,000 in monthly support right now. And so that's kind of where I'm at in terms of my needs. Um, and I know that I can live anywhere. I can live on the floor. I can live in a hostel. I actually thought about being homeless. I have a tent in my car, and I thought, not that I would be homeless because, I wouldn't be, but just, I'm just willing and my hands are open. But I really do believe that this is what the Lord is leading me to, and I'm asking Cornerstone and New Freedom to join me in this. I'm going to close, and one thing I did want to share is that last night, as I was talking to Antron, I had no idea what verse I was going to share today. I was looking up all these verses about transformation, and none of them just settled with me. And then I just sat there and I prayed, and I told the Lord, I just felt like this impression of I should share the story about the demon-possessed man. And so Anne was talking to me, and she's asking me, well, what are you going to share?